Resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
Hello, my next level friends. Welcome to a new episode of the Artist Next Level podcast. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you my interview with artist and curator Chuck Gniech. But before I do that, I want to let you know that this month of September, I'm running 3 sessions of my very popular online course, my webinar, 7 Steps to Creating a Killer Exhibition Proposal. In this webinar, I'm going to answer all questions that you may have about making a proposal, the things that should be included, and how to really make it stand out from the rest. So again, this month only, during the month of September, I'm doing 3 sessions. The first one will be on Saturday, September 9th at 7 p.m. here Chicago time. The next one will be Tuesday, September 19th at 2:30 p.m. also Chicago time. And the last one will be Tuesday, September 26th, also at 7 p.m. Chicago time. And again, these are all online webinars that you can join from your computer, from your mobile device, from anywhere in the world. All you have to do is go and sign up at theartistnextlevel.com/killer proposal. And again, you can be part of this awesome webinar, 7 Steps to Creating a Killer Exhibition Proposal. I will take you from the basic steps of initiating your research to the details of an exhibition synopsis page. These 7 steps are proven facts that will help you design exhibition proposals with excitement and also with efficiency. Additionally, I will give you practical advice on how to create essential supporting materials for all your proposals. And of course, you don't want to miss at the end of the webinar the live Q&A where I will answer all your questions and my personal case study of my upcoming 4 solo museum shows in 3 different countries for 2018. I'm going to tell you exactly how I did it, and I'm going to even show you my proposal. So definitely you don't want to miss this opportunity and take this webinar. So now let me tell you about my guest for today. Chuck Gniech is an associate professor of graphic design at Joliet Junior College and has been teaching at various colleges and universities for more than 25 years. Chuck served as curator for the galleries of the Illinois Institute of Art in Chicago from 2002 to 2013, and he also acted as the Collections Curator for the Institute's Corporate Fine Art Collection. In 2013, acting as Curator-at-Large, Chuck launched 2 traveling group exhibitions, one that addresses human rights issues and the other one exploring visual harmony in contemporary art. In 2016, he was a member of a 4-person panel that presented a session titled Change Artists, Using the Arts to Leverage Change, at the United Nations Commissions on the Status of Women, 60th session. In February of 2017, Chuck acted as a sessions chair at the College Arts Association 105th Annual Conference in New York, where the 3-member panel defined the ability of fine art to confront social issues on a global scale. Chuck holds a Master of Fine Arts degree with an emphasis in painting and a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree with an emphasis in illustration, both from Northern Illinois University. While teaching, curating, and consulting, he continues to paint and exhibit at the national level. Chuck's paintings have been included into numerous gallery and museum exhibitions. His work has been exhibited repeatedly at both the Rockford Art Museum and the Fort Wayne Museum of Art. His paintings have been acquired for multiple public and private collections, with a large canvas recently purchased for the permanent collection of the Fort Wayne Museum of Art. And I'm really excited to have in the show today, Chuck Gniech. Hey, good morning, Chuck. How are you today?
I'm well. How about you?
I am doing great. Are you ready to take us to the next level?
Absolutely.
Hey, Chuck, it's really a pleasure to have you in the podcast today. It's really wonderful that we can spend some time talking about you as an artist, you as a curator, which is something that both of you and I have in common. And so I'm really pumped to talk about that. And particularly a very awesome project that you have is a traveling exhibition that's called The Art of Influence, Breaking Criminal Traditions. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to give some pointers to artists who want to sometimes find people like you know, how they can work with curators and how do you go about finding artists, what do you look for. So it's going to be a an episode with a lot of wonderful information, and I cannot wait to get started. So, Chuck, I don't remember how we met exactly, but I know we've known each other for a while. You're here in Chicago, and so am I. And again, you as an artist and curator, we have some things in common there. And we've kind of been following each other for a while. I've seen your work, which is beautiful. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. And Chuck, maybe let's start there. How do you describe the work that you do as an artist?
My work is as an artist, right? You got to figure out which hat you're got on, right?
Right.
My work is based on the stone circles of Great Britain. I've been working with that as a concept for at least the last 25 years. I spent a great deal of time in Great Britain going back and forth, and there are 432 stone circles in Great Britain alone. Most people just know stone. My interest in the stone circles is actually more about a feeling. It's more about the meditative qualities of the structures. They're usually in places that are hard to get to. Many of them are on top of mountains or in the Lake District, but Stonehenge is the one that everybody got. I mean, it gets the most attention because it
Right.
becomes that it's that traveler's place to go. But even at Stonehenge, the feeling of the environment is just amazingly beautiful. So it's really not about the environment. It's about the emotion of being in that place. And they're very meditative places. So the work, over the years, has transitioned from structural abstraction to figurative to much more abstract and surface quality pieces. The current work that I'm working on deals with the surface qualities of the stones, and I've taken lots and lots of liberties. But they become more about large meditative pieces, much like the work of Rothko, where you can just kind of get lost in a canvas.
Right. And your work is process heavy, right? You build your layer. And tell us a little bit about that process, how you do that.
Sure. Part of the meditative quality is not necessarily experiencing the painting, but actually my experience making it. There are probably somewhere between 50 and 100 layers of paint on each canvas.
Oh, wow.
So a surface is built up, and they're very thin, sheer layers of paint, and they change drastically over time. So while I'm creating them, it's kind of being lost in time as well, because I'm not really aware of the time constraints, or I'm just creating these pieces, and they become very meditative to make. They're
and they're stunning. And it's the kind of work that you see on a photograph, but you don't get the experience of being in front of your paintings like I have been many times. And it's that surface quality that invites you, pulls you in, and then, like you said, you travel through the painting in a very nice and subtle way, and you as a viewer, you choose where to go. You're not there directing us, but rather kind of taking us on a ride along. I just mentioned, like, this meditative process of experiencing the work in all its subtleness as you approach it on a close proximity, which is something I love about your work.
Well, thank you so much. It's definitely a journey. And, one of the things I always tell my students is that you can only experience a painting to the point of your history. So people have different experiences when they encounter one of my pieces. And it really does. I mean, it really is based on what their experiences in life have been.
Right. And often your pieces are diptychs or triptychs. Am I correct? At least for what I have seen.
I've only done a couple, actually.
Really? Oh, okay. Or are they like maybe series? Maybe that's what I should mean. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
I tend to do a series of pieces. I always work in series. One of the things that I am interested in is consistency. So when I want to see a body of work, I want to see a consistent body of work. Sorry, I just went to curator version. but
No, that's cool.
It's true. It's one of those things that when I'm looking at work, I want to see a concept that has been that has been carried through, something that's been carried on with a number of pieces, so that the artist is actually exploring the various possibilities before they move on to something else. And don't get me wrong, I've actually switched gears a few times in my career, but they always seem to go back to the same concept, even from what I just described to figurative work. The figurative work that I've done in the past is very much about that same meditative quality, that emotion that place right before you wake up in the morning. You know, you're half asleep and half awake. It's that peaceful, meditative, kind of lost in dreamland quality.
Let's dive a little bit into your story. So tell us where you were born, where you grew up. I don't know if you're from Chicago originally or you moved into the area. Tell us a little bit about that, and how did you decide to become an artist?
I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, went to school in a cornfield in DeKalb, and moved into Uptown when it wasn't safe to move into Uptown after school. And during all of that time, I was always an artist. When I don't think you get to choose. I don't think you get to choose to be an artist. I think it's just something that it's a need. It's like breathing. And one of the things that I found is while I was going through school, things just kind of happened, and you have to be aware of opportunities when they show up. When I started school, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I thought I wanted to be an artist, but when your parents are saying, no, don't do that.
Right. What are you going to do with that, right?
I don't want to support you for the rest of my life. It's kind of funny, but that kind of stuff happens. And I think a lot of parents, I grew up in a very blue collar kind of middle class suburbia environment, and it was not their reality. Going to college wasn't their reality.
Yeah.
So I was the first one in my family to go to school. I worked my way through school, and it was one of those experiences that I would never get back. I started as a programmer, actually. There was a lot of things that I wanted to try. So I was taking lots of business classes. And I thought, and this was when I first started, and it was funny because I went to a junior college, took a lot of business classes because that's what my parents wanted me to do, but all of my electives were in art.
Okay,
So by the time I finished a 2-year degree after 4 years, trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, I had 2 associate degrees, and then I wound up going on to school. I have a bachelor's degree in illustration, which was more the commercial arts. And from there, while I was in that program, I was mentored by a man named Gordon Dorn, who was a painter. And he wanted me to consider a master's degree in painting. And I wound up getting a full scholarship to do just that. So it was a wonderful opportunity for me because, I got to spend the next 2 years of my life painting for free. They paid me to teach a couple of classes, and that's where my teaching career began. And they paid me enough money so that I could live off campus in a place by myself in an apartment. So it was it was the perfect opportunity. So when I got out of school, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a designer, but I also wanted to continue teaching, and I always continued painting.
Great. And you decided to stay here in Chicago then, right?
I've lived in Chicago all my life, and I currently live in Chicago.
Very cool. So now let's talk a little bit about the transition from, again, the art practice to also curatorial practice and curatorial projects.
Sure.
How did that happen for you? I know for me it was a kind of a transition. I didn't quite plan it at the beginning. It just kind of started to happen, and before I knew it, I realized this was something that I really enjoyed doing.
Right.
How was it for you?
Well, I think one of the things one of the things that same mentor, Gordon Dorn, one of the things he said is, as an artist, you're always hyphenated. And what he meant by that is you're going to do many things that are all related to the arts, and that's how you will survive as an artist. And ironically, because I was also a designer, and if you know anything about designers, they have a tendency of being a little bit controlling.
Yeah.
So I've been exhibiting since the late 80s. And while I was exhibiting, there were times when I had the opportunity to actually produce the shows. And that was the very beginning. But then I took on a position at the Illinois Institute of Art in I want to say it was the early 2000s. And when I did that, I took on the position as curator for their galleries. And I wound up, and there was a series of galleries that opened and closed. The most influential was Gallery 180, which was at the corner of Lake and Wabash. And at that point, I was, it was a great location. At that point, I was producing shows. I opened with Ed Paschke when he was alive, and that was like the most amazing experience, because I actually got to go and hang out with Ed in his studio, and and have talks with him and look through work and what I wanted to use. He was with Maya Polsky at that point, and I was working with them as well to acquire some of his larger canvases for the show. But it was a small gallery, and it wound up getting a lot of attention. And that was like the way that I opened the space. But generally speaking, what I would do is create exhibitions for local artists, for regional artists, as well as I did a lot of charitable exhibitions. I wound up doing a lot of juried shows where I could look at a variety of work. And one of the things that I think is real important for artists to understand is when you answer a call for artists, a call for work for a show, if you don't get in, it's not because your work isn't valid or isn't good. And one of the things that I did there was I would wind up looking at lots and lots of work, but then I had to create a show from that. So if there was something that was amazing that didn't necessarily fit in, I would typically write a note to the person and say, I love your work. I'm just sorry it didn't fit within this exhibition. It wasn't about space. It was about it doesn't fit as a concept. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, like a lot of beginning artists don't realize that the curator's job is to create the narrative of an exhibition, to put something together that's going to make sense as a group of works. And so often when you're young, you just feel like it's a slap in the face, and it really shouldn't be.
Right. Absolutely. And now tell us, Chuck, how do you, over the years, have learned to kind of find a balance between your teaching career, but also your studio practice and the curatorial projects, and now some of the latest big curatorial project we're going to talk about is also a traveling exhibition, so that demands more of your time. How do you manage what are some of the kind of the tips that you can share about managing multiple things within your art career?
With regard to me, it goes in waves. I just recently took on a position as a professor at Joliet Junior College. I've been asked to work on creating a graphic design program for them. They have one in place, but it's not a free program. It's a certificate program. So I'm using that as a jumping off point and actually creating something more. The changes in hats in my life is it kind of comes and goes. Some things take a lot of precedence, and then it kind of goes away. When I create a body of work, there's the high point, there's the I'm so focused on it, and you're just obsessed. But then once it's done, it's like you get to step back and take a deep breath. And typically, by the time that happens, something else comes along. Right. And the teaching aspect of my life, I love teaching. I've been teaching since grad school, since the late 80s. So that's always been a passion of mine, and I love helping people to succeed. Because I think so many people are afraid, like they don't know how to do something. So just giving them that pathway is really beneficial.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? With regard to breaking criminal traditions, that's something that Breaking Criminal Traditions is an exhibition. I believe it has 24, 25 artists right now. It's a traveling exhibition that deals with human rights issues. The exhibition it had its debut at IIT Kent College of Law, which seemed to make perfect sense, and that was in October of, I want to say it was 2013. And what the intent was, bringing issues of criminal traditions to the forefront of people who are going to be future lawyers and future judges, because that's where change could happen. And when we talk about criminal traditions, the criminal traditions are things like honor killing or acid violence or female genital mutilation. There are things that are going on in the world and here. That's the part that people don't realize. Honor killing may be something. Honor killings happen here, but if they're not called honor killing, they're called homicide. It's human trafficking. That was a big one in the news in the desert Southwest, where the guy who was driving the truck filled with people in the back of it that were trying to be smuggled into the country. That's trafficking, and those people wound up dying based on that person not caring about life. Right. It's just a really interesting situation. But what's interesting about that is the Breaking Criminal Traditions exhibition is not horrifying. It's not a show of ugly, scary images. They're all beautiful. What I've done is I've selected fine art from numerous artists and selected pieces that allude to the ideas behind the criminal traditions. That way, what it does is it opens up a dialogue so that people who are attending the show can find something beautiful and inspiring. And they, again, it's whatever you bring to a piece of artwork that you're going to see. But there's sometimes in the most recent exhibition we did at the Human Rights Institute Gallery in King University in New Jersey. And the benefit there was we actually had some signage that we spoke to some of the different issues that of the criminal traditions, just kind of implying that, okay, take a look at this painting, it's a beautiful piece, or take a look at the sculpture. And people could experience it for the way they wanted to, but then occasionally there was a spattering of signage that would actually talk about some of the traditions.
Yeah, it's absolutely a beautiful exhibition now, and the concept, the idea is wonderful as well in terms of how you've been putting it together. Now, where did the idea begin for you? How did you get involved with the project? I'm really interested in kind of knowing the birth of the art of influence breaking criminal traditions.
It was actually at a dinner party. It's kind of crazy because it's gone to, we've spoken about this exhibition at the College Art Association recently. That was in February. We spoke at the United Nations on the status of women. So we've done a variety of work, but it all stemmed from a dinner party that we had at our home. And Cheryl Jefferson and Richard Laurent came over for dinner, and there was a discussion, and the discussion started out with this great idea that they had, and Cheryl was very much interested in the criminal tradition. She's a writer. She is a wonderful person, and she's always somebody who's going to fight for the underdog. And she knew of my background of dealing with a lot of charitable events and creating exhibitions based on concepts for charity. And she was talking about it, and eventually, probably 20 minutes into the conversation, I got up and I went and got a pad of paper and came back and I said, okay, how can I help? And she's both her and Richard were very excited that I wanted to help them, and they said we were hoping that you were going to say that. So I was kind of ambushed, I guess. But
they got you at the dinner party.
They knew who I am. It was funny. So we just sat there and we started writing down ideas about how this could work and where we would go. And since the IIT Kent College of Law exhibition, it's traveled to the Beverly Arts Center. It traveled to the Arts Center in Highland Park, the gallery at North Central College. It's been to the Bridgeport Arts Center. And like I said, most recently at the Human Rights Institute Gallery of Kean University.
Mm-hmm. That is wonderful, Chuck. Now, let's talk also a little bit about then the selection process, because I think this is something that would be really interesting for a lot of artists, which sometimes, asking, they ask themselves, how do I get into the radar of people like you and me and others who are curating exhibitions, who have ideas and themes and topics? How did you go about, now that you had the concept after that dinner party and then you started developing the idea of what this could be, how did you go about selecting the artists and how those artists have evolved over time as the exhibition, since it's a traveling show, as the exhibition continues to travel? Right.
It's interesting because the artists aren't making work for me. They're not making work for the show. They're not, that's a generalization. I believe there are 2 or 3 that are at this point. Okay. But generally, what I think is most important is that when you're, as an artist who creates something and it's your passion, it's something that you're passionate about, it's something that you're creating for you. And I tend to believe that you need to be selfish when you're making art. It should be about you because it's about your inside. It's about your soul. And if, in fact, it fits into an idea based on, for instance, the criminal traditions, and it's not literal, because I tend to avoid literal.
Yeah.
I don't need an illustration of somebody, who's been the result of an acid attack. I would rather it be something that is from your soul, and then you present it and say, what is this? Is this of interest? I could see where this might allude to the idea of human trafficking. And what's interesting is there have been artists. Are you familiar with Nancy Rosen's work?
Is she from Chicago? Where is she from?
In Chicago. Nancy Rosen is the woman. There is a Netflix series that Lily Tomlin is working on. And in the series, and I can't remember what the name of it is, Lily Tomlin actually winds up being an artist. And the work that she is creating is actually Nancy Rosen's.
Okay, cool.
So Nancy Rosen is her hand, if you will. Nancy's work, when I look at Nancy's work, it is truly about women's support of women. And there is a love, there is a distress, there is a passion, and the works have a tendency of being somewhat dark in my mind. But when I asked Nancy to be a part of the Criminal Traditions exhibition, she thought I was nuts. She didn't see what I was seeing. And I thought, interesting that is. So there are times when artists don't really realize what they're creating, or how it can be interpreted, because they have their own passion, their own intent.
No, absolutely. And as the exhibition travels, do you add more artists to the show?
It's interesting because most of the time the work is always different. Every exhibition that I've created, don't get me wrong, there have been times I've used the same work in 2 different shows or 3 different shows. But generally, things get switched out because I'm constantly looking for new work. There is a wonderful artist that I met who's not on the website yet. Her name is Debbie Cornwell.
Okay.
Debbie has she's done a great deal of work regarding Gitmo, and she's also the people who were retained. and the people who were released. And she's a photographer. And one of the most heart-wrenching images that I've seen was when they're released. One of the things that she told me about was that when she was approved to go and photograph at Guantanamo Bay, she was told that she could not photograph anybody from the front. So it always had, if there was a person in it, they had to be photographed from the back, whether they be a prisoner or whether they be a guard. He carried that concept through because she wound up going back to find the people who were released in their homeland, and rephotographed them with, obviously from the back. So she continued that same concept through. And it's heart-wrenching when you see the environments that these people were taken from.
Right.
And that was from, I don't know if you're familiar with Filter Photo. It's an organization that they have a conference. I believe it's every year. And every other year, I'm one of the portfolio reviewers, and I get to go in and look at work that's being created. And surprisingly, last year when I did it, everything that I looked at dealt with human rights issues. So, we talk about artists who are trying to figure out where to go to present their work. It was so blatantly obvious to me that that's what people were doing. It was like, okay, yeah, I get it. So Debbie will be in a future exhibition.
Okay. Wonderful. That's amazing. And so for artists who are interested on how do they get in your radar? What advice would you give?
I'm really accessible. Send me an email. Send me an email, direct me to your website. Seriously, I'm pretty much available, so I don't have a problem. Like, for instance, I'm always looking for new work for breaking criminal traditions because the exhibition will continue. There's a lot of possibilities for future exhibitions. Many proposals have been sent out, and there are two major possibilities for large-scale shows. So what I do is I'm very comfortable looking at work online, and if I find something that I like, I tend to want to go and meet with that person in the studio, and have a studio visit and just sit down and chat with them. And I find that that's the best way of doing it. And as a curator, one of the things that I do, it seems like it's a best practice, is when people put proposals together and they send them to you, you can, as a curator, you tend to look at things a little differently. And even if there's something, just you don't really think the work is there yet, or you find pieces that you like, but there's the consistency is just slightly off. I don't have a problem going and meeting with somebody and having a discussion with them and looking at additional work. Because if I wanted to use 2 or 3 pieces as opposed to the entire show, it might be an avenue to go into a group exhibition.
Right. That's wonderful.
Having that discussion is really beneficial to the artist, if you ask me.
Right. That's great advice, Chuck. And I can say this with certainty that it's really wonderful working with you as a curator, yourself, being the curator, and being myself on the other side of the artist, being part of this Breaking Criminal Traditions exhibition. And again, the way when you approached me with the vision, with the idea, I didn't see my work, like you mentioned, I didn't see the fit right away, but then as you took the time to explain and to provide vision and what you were looking at, it made total sense. And that's something that you do very well, and I want to thank you for that, because you put a lot of time and effort to working with the artists that you choose for the exhibitions. You take care really well of the artists and the exhibitions and keep everyone informed, and that is wonderful, to have people like you in the art world that are not only wonderful artists but also wonderful curators, and understand both sides of what is it like to be the artist and what is it like to be the curator, and the gallerist as well, because you've been there as well in that role. So that I think that at the end of the day that kind of creates a really nice whole approach that you bring to the table when you're working with artists and putting together these exhibitions such as this one, the art of of influence. So, Chuck, where can our friends find information about both you as an artist, for those who want to see your work, and also for those who are really interested on this exhibition and perhaps want to look at, the other artists in the show, or maybe they have ideas of maybe they see they can also fit with what you're doing. What are the websites where they can go and find that information?
Sure. My personal website is Gniech.com, so it's Gniech.com. The Breaking Criminal Traditions exhibition is, their website is breakingcriminaltraditions.com. And I also do a blog that is chicagofineart.blogspot.com. And if you Google me, you'll find that there's plenty of information online about me, so you can actually touch base with me. I'm very easy to get a hold of.
Wonderful. That's good to hear. And also for the people who might be interested on maybe even hosting the exhibition, they can contact you also through the website, right?
Absolutely.
That's great. And Chuck, one of the comments that I didn't make before because I didn't want to interrupt you, but it's funny because on the story that I actually went to Joliet Junior College, which is now where you're teaching right now, which is wonderful.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Right after high school, I went to Joliet Junior College, and it was kind of a similar thing. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I liked art, and that seemed to be fitting for me. And I went, and I have to say I loved it. Every professor there really gave me the push that I needed to get on the right track. So
yeah,
I think you're
funny.
in a...
I'm assuming you worked with Joe Milosevic.
Exactly. Yeah. Joe Milosevic.
What is so funny
Steve
about
Sherrill.
that is when I was interviewing for the position, I ran into Joe, and one of the first exhibitions that I curated was at Joliet Junior College.
Wow!
And it was called Perceptions of Solitude.
Okay.
And when he just recently retired.
Yeah.
And when he left, when I got to school, I opened up my mailbox, and the proposal that I sent some 20 years ago was in my mailbox. It was like this wonderful time capsule gift.
Right. Kind of finishing the circle, right? That's pretty cool.
Yes.
So don't laugh if you go around campus and you see a couple of my paintings that are in the collection. I don't know where they might be, but
I'm going to be looking for them.
Nothing to what I'm doing right now, but again, it was pretty an amazing place. And you're right. Education is very important, and who more like people like you who are there helping the next generation understand the field, understand what they're going against, and what is it going to be like when they finish school, which I think is very important to pass on that knowledge to the next generation. So
yeah.
Well, Chuck, as we close for this session, which again has been a wonderful conversation, you have provided a lot of great insights as well in what you do, how you work as well, and this amazing project that you have with a wonderful mission. Any last words that you want to say to our friends?
Make work that you're passionate about.
Amazing words. That's awesome. Well, Chuck, that's very important. And with this, I want to again close our conversation today. Thank you so much for being part of this podcast. That's been pretty awesome talking to you. And I want to thank. Thank you. And I want to thank also all our friends who listen to this podcast. If you found it interesting and useful for your career, please share it with your friends. That way we can continue spreading the word and also, getting more of these stories out to more artists out there. So thanks again, and I will see you at the next level.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.